Congresswoman Candice Miller on the line with us. She is since she's taken over the helm of the House Administration Committee this year, which might seem like getting the short straw, all things considered, given now what your job is, Congresswoman.
It's been interesting. It's been fun. Yeah, it's a part of the responsibilities of the House Administration is, we set the pay, or not so much the pay, but the budgets for each individual House member, and then the budgets for the committees. So, of course, we are dealing with sequestration like everybody else, and this was the first thing out of the box. I had to cut every member of the House, or cut their budgets by about 8.5%. And then the committees, we cut them about 11%. So it has been sort of an interesting thing. But I got to tell you, many of the people that have been complaining about this, coming up to me, I sort of looked at them and saying, look, I'm the last person you should be telling you can't take a cut from, okay? I live in southeast Michigan.
Really?
you need to take a walk around my neighborhood,
right,
where, we were number one in all the categories you didn't want to be number one in during this very painful economic transition. So anyway, hey, look, we got to walk the walk here. I think we need to be setting the tone, trying to live within our budgets, and that's what we're doing.
That's where it should begin, is in those offices, wherever they can trim some fat. And I don't mean to sound cold and calloused, but there are cuts that need to be made, and I know this is costing some people their jobs there, but the reality is we need those cuts, and these are the places where they can be made. The White House chooses to make them in symbolic ways to hurt the people of the United States. The White House tours, for example, absolutely unforgivable and ridiculous. And now the FAA being used as a tool. Look, you're headed to the airport later today. You don't know what you're going to find, but I can tell you this. I've got enough information that's been forwarded to me that I started talking about in February that shows the FAA could easily handle the little cutbacks that they had to have, the reduction of about $485 million out of a $9.2 billion, I don't know, whatever their budget is at this point. And the point is, there are all kinds of ways they can make cuts that we, the average person, as a traveler, wouldn't feel, but they go for the ones that we will feel, the air traffic controllers.
Paul W., you are exactly right. Their budget, by the way, which has just gone up every year. Look, I know cuts are painful, but it's not like everyone didn't know that the sequester might happen. We've known about it for a year and a half, just as we're talking about the members' accounts or the committee's accounts, and the FAA has to find, I think in their case, it's like $630 million. Well, last year they spent $500 million on consultants. I just point that out as one thing that they might think about doing rather than this. And then, really the administration waited like 4 days before these furloughs and informed the public and the airlines that they were going to happen. So I don't know, either incredibly poor planning or poor management or political, quite frankly.
It's totally political, just as taking down, canceling the White House tours. These are just so blatantly political that I can't believe the American people don't rise up above all of this fray and say, come on, are you kidding me?
I think that is going to happen. I'll tell you, in the case of the White House tours, I think the administration was very tone deaf, and of course they blamed it all on the Secret Service. But the Secret Service gave them options, and that was the option of all of them that the White House chose. The administration chose, well, we'll just cancel the tours. And now they're doing the same thing here with the FAA. So I don't know, Paul W. Apparently it's all part of the president's charm offensive.
Yeah, really doing a nice job with that. Let me tell you about tone deaf. By the way, that's really smart, to throw the guys under the bus that are supposed to throw themselves in front of you in harm's way. These are guys that are supposed to jump in front of bullets to hit the bullet that's aimed at you. They jump in front of it, and they take the hit, and he throws them under the bus on saying it's the Secret Service's fault that we don't have White House tours. That is so disgusting. Don't even get me started on that road.
Well, this is why these things are blowing up in their face, and I think this with the FAA is going to blow up in their face as well, because the public and the media will start, just as you are, start getting into the weeds. Why are they doing this? I mean, you've got, a couple of years ago, they spent over $8 million on conferences. Conferences. There are things that they could be cutting. They might have to go to a conference once in a while, but, the FAA over the years really has had sort of a history of very poor financial management, and there are plenty of If you want to get into the weeds on it, you certainly could. But again, they've had a year and a half to sort of plan this out, but this is the first thing that they've decided to do. They don't give you any notice, and then boom, all of a sudden you have these furloughs. Everybody has these long delays. And of course, the administration wants to point, I guess, to the House Republicans and say, look, if they weren't such obstructionists, we wouldn't have to have these terrible things happening. We could just keep running deficits until, kingdom come, I guess. We're never going to get a handle on federal spending. And we just don't feel that way. I think we can't keep spending money we don't have, and we need to prioritize our resources, our spending, etc. Pretty simple stuff, I think. I mean, maybe not simple, but it has to happen.
Well, you got to wonder, use the term, Congresswoman Candice Miller with us, tone deaf. Look at the, I hate to say it because they try to do a great job, and they mostly do, but the TSA, when they said, okay, people can carry these small pocket knives on airlines, have they not had any conversation with anyone? Immediately when they came out with that, they were absolutely attacked. Protests from flight attendants and air marshals and all the top CEOs of the airlines, and the unions even representing the airport screeners that they said they were doing it to help.
I saw that the fellow that runs the TSA just came out a couple of days ago after talking to his TSA advisory committee, is that a big part of the TSA budget is actually paid for by passenger fee collection. Since 9/11, everybody has to pay their security fee. The airlines provide all the space for the TSA in the airports. They provide for the law enforcement that is there as well. And they also have a huge fee. I forget what it is per airline, but there's a lot of the budget for the TSA that is paid for by non-government funds. I mean, think about this stuff, guys, before you start, really disadvantaging or inconveniencing the traveling public, which is not necessary. You have to prioritize. That has to be done in every household, in every business, and guess what? The federal government is not immune from that. We have to just think it through a bit, have a little bit of a plan, particularly when you have a long time frame to prioritize and make the plan, and then execute the plan in a way that, it is the least painful to the public, who you are servicing, by the way.
Yeah, you're supposed to be servicing. Congresswoman Candice Miller, do we dare, we're way behind now already, but do we dare open the door on immigration reform and border security and all of that?
Sure. If you want to talk about that, actually, my border security bill, I'm the chairperson on the Homeland Security Committee of the borders. My border security bill, which actually passed the House last year, then it didn't go through the Senate, but we've dropped it again, and I think it is going to be a component, if there is, comprehensive immigration reform, because I'll tell you, absent a strong border security component, and that the American public, through its Congress, has a very high level of confidence that we are securing our borders, I think comprehensive immigration reform is going to be a heavy lift. That has to happen. So I've been pushing that thing like crazy. Our bill actually was introduced in the Senate, a companion bill by Cornyn, who's a senator from Texas, and that is starting to look pretty darn good, I think. So we'll see.
It's been talked about for so long. Most of us don't really believe anything's going to happen, but,
Well, I think there's a window of time to do immigration reform, and that window is right now. I mean, in politics, sometimes it's something, the stars sort of line up, and there's an issue like that will gain its own momentum, and that's happening, I think, on the Hill. But on our side, and I think really the majority of the American people and many, many Democrats have said, look, we can move perhaps ahead with some of these things, but if you do not have you have to secure the borders. We must secure the borders. And by the way, that is one of the responsibilities enumerated to the members of Congress under the Constitution, so we have to make sure we do that. Otherwise, you're going to have this same conversation next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, that it has to be done.
Do we have any expectations that our Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, testifying at Capitol Hill today, will say anything new?
I don't know what she's going to say. She testified in front of our committee last week, and I actually, what I told her is, I said, Secretary, in regards to border security, I said, your agency has not come up with an accountability matrix of how we can have, some sort of system so that we can figure out what percentage of our borders are under operational control. And I said, if you don't do that, I don't know about this comprehensive immigration reform. And I said it would be very ironic and really too bad if it was your responsibility of your agency that was the stumbling block for the country moving ahead on immigration reform. And I said, I know your job is tough, but guess what? There's no one else to ask. We can't ask anybody else. You're in charge of securing the border. You know, you have to tell us what you need, and then we have to make sure we have the political will to do so.
What did she say? What did she say?
Oh, yeah, the borders are more secure than they ever have been. I said, based on what? On apprehensions? That's the only thing you ever talk about is what your apprehensions are, which you can measure how many you got, but you're not measuring how many you didn't get. And you have to look at, it's a dynamic thing. The border is a dynamic environment. It's not static. And so, you have a layered approach, boots on the ground, using new technology with the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles, strategic fencing. There's over 700 miles of fencing, all of these things. And what else do we need to do to secure the border? And, we need to make that a part of a immigration bill. Anyway, we've been pushing that like crazy. I'm starting to feel like we've made some real progress there. So,
well, good for you.
We'll see.
All right. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks, Paul W.
Thank you, Congresswoman Candice Miller here on the Paul W. Smith Show, WJR.